So this is the barbecue I bought. It doesn't have a place for a propane tank. It runs on natural gas. So my plan is to run a gas line from this fireplace out to my balcony to this barbecue. And that involves creating an output like this. So this is a bit more involved than other home improvement projects I've done involving gas lines or plumbing, but I figured I would document my progress. So let me show you what I did. The first part, to give you a little context, is that this is not a very long run. You can see here from the access panel to the gas line out to the balcony on the right is about 5 feet. So my plan is to turn off the valve to the fireplace, which is that brass fitting there, and change that street elbow to a T, and then add the fireplace back in and have a street elbow then that is available to run a gas line out to the balcony on the right here. So one of the first parts of the project was to cut a hole in the wall. Before making any cuts or touching anything that was involved in the gas, I looked at my gas bill and found the meter number. And since I'm in a multi-unit condo, it was easy to go and find the meter that controls the gas to my unit. So now I know where to go with a wrench to turn off the gas to my unit if necessary. Otherwise, I'm going to rely on that valve to turn the gas off to the area that I'm working. So this is going to be how I prevent a mess. You can hear I've kept the cat away from the project, but the other way to prevent a mess is to tape this bag around the opening. You can see I taped the bottom and I've taped the sides. I might secure the top loosely, but basically I'm going to take the roto zip, which in the past has created quite a mountain of dust for just such a small opening. I'll set the depth and minimally puncture the wall and just move around here. I've made sure the wiring goes in a conduit away from this outlet by looking through the hole that I happen to have over here. Here's a peek at that electrical outlet from behind. I love using my phone for this kind of thing. There's no way I could stick my head in there and see it, but I take a little video with my phone and then I can confirm that things are going to be safe. So as you can see near the end of the cuts, looks like I lost some of the containment of the dust, but most of the dust is in the bag. And then now that it's done, I get to push this out, and it looks like a pretty clean area to fix. So I'll just be able to keep this piece and probably stitch it back in with a little bit of a backing. So that'll do the job. So the first part of the project is to unhook the working gas fireplace insert. You can see it has its own valve to turn on and off, but once I turn off the outside valve on the hearth, then this will all be shut down and I can disconnect it, hopefully to reconnect it soon later. The first part of this project is this small brass fitting, which I believe came with the fireplace insert. It reduces the 1/2 inch pipe down to the 3/8 or whatever's required by the gas insert. Removing this brass part was just using a crescent wrench to find the flats and using a pipe wrench to hold the pipe constant. You know, I didn't want to put any stress upstream of the pipes that I was removing. So you always want to do that way you won't deform things that you don't intend to deform. And this came off. I was able to reuse it completely by just cleaning off the joint compound and making it clean. This is the one part I felt like I could reuse because if it did leak, I could get a new one. But otherwise, I used all new fixtures and pipes. So this part turned out to be unexpectedly challenging. I went back to the other side of the wall from the fireplace, went through the access panel. I had 2 large wrenches on things, one to hold the street elbow as it was so that I wouldn't get torque on that because I didn't want to damage or hurt the valve below. You can see the brass valve below. I had that off. Now I was just removing the pipe on top and the gas had stopped. I could smell it from what was remaining, but that dissipated very quickly. once the gas valve was off, and I kept checking that valve regularly as I removed the next part. So now it was to remove the street valve, the street 90 degree from the valve, and again I used a wrench crescent to keep the flats on that brass intact, and the other wrench to really torque it off, and that seemed to work eventually. It was very difficult. You can see I sprayed a little bit of soapy water on that continuously to just make sure I wasn't introducing any new leaks at the valve. The valve was off, so there shouldn't be any gas flowing to these other parts, and that's why I was able to work with this as it was open. You can see I added the T, I added the new street 90, and I was lining that up to the back of the fireplace, which you can see here, and then taking my phone and taking a picture through so I could sight that angle, which was a 45-degree angle that would go into the back of the fireplace. Once I had that hooked up, I capped off the street elbow so I could start to turn on that valve and test everything for leaks. So I cut a new access panel where I didn't have one before so that I could get to this 45. It's a little trickier than I thought, and I wanted to make sure that that wasn't leaking. So it was worth cutting another hole in the wall, in my view. The gas back on and having that capped off, I was able to run the fireplace, make sure I was getting good pressure. I didn't do anything stupid. So at this point, I was pretty much back to where I started, and now I could hook up the barbecue gas line, which is in the next couple of shots here. So now we're going to make a hole to the outside world. I was comfortable at this step that I had everything at the right height. I was able to measure the height of the street T that I now was using to feed this barbecue outline. And I measured that. I set some of the pipes in place without tightening everything down, but just enough hand tight that I could see that this pipe would go out. I drilled a hole from the inside to the outside, and I used the smaller bit. And then I used the larger 7/8 bit for a 1/2 inch pipe to run from the outside to the inside, get a clean hole, and then ran the long run of Schedule 40 iron pipe to the fittings that I had lined up on the inside. Now here you can see I'm using the pipe wrench to carefully adjust the direction of the 45 so that it lines up with the pipe that's going out through the wall. So there's not a lot of flexibility there. And in order to make sure I did that right, I did the hand threading, and then I unthreaded it, and it was time to put the pipe dope on. To put that pipe sealant on the pipe dope, I wasn't really able to look down the pipe because it was in the wall. So again, I love using my phone, putting it in the wall, taking a look around, and really took a bunch of pictures to make sure that I had that thoroughly coated on the inside before doing the outside of the pipe that was going out, and then hooking it all together so that I had a good seal, and I only had to tighten it down once. There's really no going back on a project like this. If you loosen things, from what I've heard, you're going to lose the integrity of that seal. So one guideline I heard was that you want to make sure that you're turning at least 1.5 or 2 turns after hand tight. So I hand tighten all the pipes with the pipe sealant on it, and then I made a little mark with the pipe sealant on the pipe and continued with the wrench to get the extra 1.5 to 2 turns. You really make sure it's firm and tight. But in order to make sure you're advancing that pipe around, especially in a tight space, I'm not always looking at it. I don't always have a lot of room. I was using that little mark to track how many revolutions that I was making on a flat pipe. Just thought I'd share that little trick. So now I've capped off the outside of the barbecue supply, and I can turn the pressure back on. So I've opened the valve. I've tested with soapy solution, mostly soap, a little bit of water to make it bubbly. Sprayed that on all the joints that I've just done, and I've got that on there just hand tight with some Teflon tape. I'm not using the yellow long-term tape for gas because I'm not going to use that. I'm just going to take this cap off and redo the end with proper joint compound and I didn't want to have any residue. So now I'm just spraying a little bit on here, and I know that a lot of people don't know exactly what they're looking for. So I've got a shot in here of loosening the cap just by hand and letting the bubbles form, and you'll see that you'll you'll know if you have a leak because bubbles will kind of persist or they'll start to grow at those joints. And don't be afraid to put plenty of soapy water on there just to make sure that you're coating the entire surface and creating an opportunity for those bubbles to form. Once you're comfortable that you have all the bubbles resolved and the main plumbing is secure, then you can put the final fitting on the outside, which I've done here. It's a quick connect that came with the barbecue. It's an automatic shut off, so if there's nothing plugged into it, the valve does shut. Again, I check that to make sure that that would seal properly. If it didn't, I would just add a valve to the outside, a manual quarter turn ball valve that would be suitable to shut the gas off on the outside. But I already have one on the inside, so I'm pretty safe there. Your code will tell you how to secure everything and the kinds of materials that you'll need to use. I had to use Schedule 40 even on the inside wall. They definitely don't allow any flex pipe. That certainly would have made things easier, but it is not permitted as part of code. Have to have things properly secured on the inside and enough shutoffs to meet that code standard. Here's the last piece of the project, really to put the wall back together again. You can see that before I painted over it and sanded it. Came out pretty well, wouldn't notice, and I have the access panel still that was there before. Now all there is to do is just enjoy the barbecue. So hopefully this project either gives you confidence to pursue something like this yourself or makes you understand that it's best in your best interest to hire a professional. I was lucky here. I had the valves in place to do the project without really turning off the supply to the entire condo. I highly recommend planning the project out. I did a lot of measurements. I still went to a big box store and bought a lot of extra parts so that I would have the lengths that I needed and additional elbows and especially the end caps for the fittings that I was going to use so that I could cap things off and keep the project moving and test things as I went. So that's it for me. I wish you good luck with your project.